At the edge of Japan's Mount Fuji, there is a place where compasses spin, voices seem to whisper from nowhere, and footsteps echo even when no one is walking. And yet, the most chilling question people ask isn't about the forest itself. It's about the countless searchers, hikers, and police officers who all report the same thing. Why do they hear someone calling their name, even when they're alone? Aokigahara Forest has stood for centuries, a sprawling sea of trees formed from ancient lava flows. Its floor uneven and porous, its silence so complete that even the wind seems to avoid it. For most of its history, it was simply a dense woodland at the foot of Fuji, an unremarkable place with a few local legends and an occasional lost traveler. But toward the end of the 20th century, something shifted. Reports began to emerge of people entering and never returning. First a handful, then dozens, then more than 100 per year. Journalists took note. Police units began conducting seasonal searches. And soon, the forest was given a new name, one that would echo across the world, the Suicide Forest. But long before the headlines, long before the documentaries and warning signs, the people who lived at the base of Fuji whispered about Aokigahara with caution. Its early folklore described it as Yurii no Mori, the forest of ghosts. Villagers spoke of spirits who wandered its depths, unable to leave because their deaths had been unnatural or lonely. The stories were mostly dismissed by outsiders as superstition. Still, the forest held a strange magnetism. Its volcanic soil absorbed sound, swallowing footsteps and voices, making even small distances feel impossibly vast. Travelers wrote as early as the 1800s that the forest seemed to distort direction, as if the trees were subtly rearranging themselves when nobody was looking. In the 1950s and 60s, Aokigahara's reputation changed from folklore to documented tragedy. Japan was recovering from war and economic hardship, and newspapers began reporting bodies discovered deep within the woods. Police patrols became routine, and volunteers started marking paths with tape to avoid getting lost. By the 1970s, the forest had become infamous enough that local authorities tried, unsuccessfully, to downplay the reports. But each year, more searchers entered the woods, and more stories emerged, not only of the deceased, but of bizarre experiences that professionals struggled to explain. One of the most unsettling accounts came from a police officer who had worked years of search duty. He described stopping mid-hike because he heard a woman calling his name, a voice he swore he recognized from a case he had worked the year before. When he turned, the forest behind him was completely empty. Another officer reported that once, while walking alone, the forest became so silent that he felt pressure in his ears, like being underwater. Then, suddenly, he heard footsteps racing toward him, but saw nothing. These accounts weren't printed in tabloids. They came from interviews, debriefings, and internal police conversations, passed quietly between those who spent time inside the trees. Hikers share similar stories. Some claim that even when they bring new batteries, their flashlights flicker or die the deeper they go. Others describe feeling like they're being watched, especially near old camps abandoned by visitors who changed their minds at the last moment. One of the most famous testimonies came from a journalist who accompanied local volunteers on a search. She wrote that at one point she stepped off the trail and suddenly felt an overwhelming sense of dread, as if she had stepped into the gaze of something ancient. A veteran guide quickly pulled her back, whispering that the forest doesn't want you wandering. Much of Aokigahara's unsettling atmosphere can be explained scientifically. The dense trees block wind, the soil absorbs sound, and the forest floor is a maze of holes and ridges formed by lava, making travel slow and disorienting. Compasses often fail due to the high iron content in the volcanic rock. Even experienced hikers can find themselves walking in circles without realizing it. But what remains harder to explain are the stories of coordinated hallucinations, where multiple people report hearing the same phantom sounds or feeling the same sudden, overwhelming emotions at the same locations. As the 1990s and early 2000s arrived, the number of yearly searches grew to the point where police tried removing public statistics entirely, hoping to reduce the forest's dark reputation. But searchers continued to enter, and each one carried out a mosaic of personal accounts, quiet, strange, deeply emotional experiences that rarely reached the media. Volunteers spoke of abandoned tents, neatly folded clothes placed beside tree roots, notebooks filled with final thoughts, and occasionally, small offerings left by loved ones. These scenes were heartbreaking yet peaceful. But other areas felt different. Cold pockets where the temperature inexplicably dropped, or stretches of forest where birds never seemed to enter. Some investigators have wondered whether the forest's reputation is a self-fulfilling cycle, drawing vulnerable individuals who already feel disconnected from the world. They argue that the eerie atmosphere shapes perception, turning natural sounds into imagined voices and shadows into figures that aren't there. Psychologists say the same silence that makes Aokigahara beautiful also heightens anxiety, especially when someone is already under stress. The isolation can amplify every fear, every doubt, every sound. But there are other theories, more cultural, more historical, and, to some, more unsettling. The most persistent theory among locals is that Aokigahara holds an imprint of centuries of sorrow. While many scholars insist there's no solid evidence, folklore claims that during historic famines, some families practiced abasut, leaving the elderly to die in remote places. Whether or not this happened in Aokigahara specifically is debated, but the idea has persisted strongly enough that some believe the forest carries a kind of memory. To them, the uneasy feelings, the phantom voices, the sudden chills, these are not hallucinations, but remnants of past suffering woven into the land itself. There are also those who believe that the forest's strange phenomena are tied to the geological forces beneath it. Mount Fuji remains an active volcano, and some scientists have proposed that tiny, constant seismic shifts might affect the human nervous system. These microtremors, too subtle to consciously notice, could alter balance, perception, or emotional responses. The result could mimic what many describe: sudden waves of fear, inexplicable sadness, or the uncanny sensation of being watched. It is a theory grounded in measurable forces, yet it somehow feels as mysterious as the folklore it attempts to explain. Then there is the question of sound. Aokigahara's soil absorbs noise so thoroughly that people walking just a few feet apart can feel strangely separated, as if they are in different rooms. Some acoustics experts have speculated that this silence can distort the human sense of space. When the brain cannot locate sound accurately, it may invent phantom noises to compensate. Perhaps this is why so many people report hearing footsteps that don't match anyone's movement or voices calling their name from impossible angles. It's a rational explanation, yet many searchers insist that what they heard was too clear, too distinct, too personal. Despite all of these theories, psychological, cultural, geological, none fully explains the most consistent, documented pattern. How many searchers, police officers, and hikers claim they felt the forest was aware of them? Not hostile, not violent, but observant, as if their presence disturbed something that preferred to remain undisturbed. Even those who approach their work with empathy and professionalism admit that there are areas of the forest they avoid without knowing exactly why. One volunteer once said, "There are places where the forest feels heavy, like you're breathing someone else's sorrow." And yet, the forest is not only a place of darkness. Many who visit speak of its beauty: sunlight filtering through dense branches, moss glowing a vibrant green, the distant silhouette of Fuji rising above the canopy. For some, Aokigahara is peaceful, even healing. It is a paradox, a place both feared and admired, tragic yet serene. And maybe that contradiction is part of what makes its mysteries feel so profound. Still, one lingering question remains, one that has persisted across decades of testimonies from people who have no reason to embellish or invent. If the forest's strange experiences were merely psychological, why do so many visitors describe the same sensations, the same sounds, the same moments of uncanny familiarity? Why do they hear footsteps that speed up when they stop? Why do they hear their names whispered by voices they recognize? And why, even after leaving the forest, do some people say the silence of Aokigahara follows them for days, as if the forest has left a shadow in their memory? No matter how many theories are offered, no matter how much science is applied, one fact remains. Aokigahara is a place where the boundary between the external world and internal emotion becomes impossibly thin. A place where countless people have faced their deepest despair, and where searchers continue to walk paths lined with both tragedy and unanswered questions. And perhaps the most haunting thought of all is not the voices, nor the footsteps, nor the vanishing paths, It's the possibility that the forest does not simply witness human sorrow, but remembers it, and that somewhere beneath its ancient trees, in the silence that swallows every sound, those memories are still whispering to anyone who dares to listen. If you want more real-life mysteries, unexplained disappearances, and chilling true stories just like this one, make sure you subscribe. Hit the notification bell and drop a comment telling me which case you want covered next. Your suggestion might become the next deep dive.